Oh, I was so close that time. What's going on, gentlemen?
Welcome everybody to Kyber Cave After Dark, ladies and gentlemen. Hello and welcome.
Say Wong, he says
Hello
every
to
dog has to say.
Welcome to my clean house.
Woohoo! Man, you have just been on the move, dude. You have just been nonstop.
Got my Mando in the way background there.
Woo! And happy, well, I guess it's the 5th now, but happy belated May 4th, gentlemen.
Oh, I forgot. And since this is Kyber Cave and Saber stuff related, but I want to show you guys something cool. It just came in a little bit ago.
Ooh. Broke the cardinal rule that's scary.
Yeah. So Mrs. Fours is going to beat my ass for this one because she is like a huge Zelda fan like me. But from Jawa's Junkyard, my Master Sword Saber hilt came in.
Wow.
And I ordered special in purple because they only sell it in blue, but I wanted mine done in purple. And this thing.
Oh my God, dude.
And through the Saber trade, I'm getting a Master Sword blade it's kind of like a Ripper blade, but Saber Trade does it themselves, and it's gonna match all this, and I'll have a Zelda font on it and everything. Dude, this thing is gonna be so sick.
Wow, that's crazy.
Freaking accurate as balls, man.
Oh, that is beautiful.
The question is, do you have the Hyrulean shield to go with it?
I need to get one. And I need to find somebody who actually makes a really, really accurate version of it. But yeah, I think this is probably one of the last Sabers I'm going to buy and own for ever. I still need a Vader, but after that, I think I'm done. But this is a special project. This is because, my son and I are like the biggest Zelda fans ever.
Right.
That's so cool. That's cool. So congratulations on that. That's dope. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see the blade on that too.
Oh my God, it's going to be beautiful. Say Wong says that Silicon has been canceled.
No.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh, by the way, I'm not going to throw any spoilers or numbers out there, but I would like to give Kyber Cave a huge congratulations on their success this weekend.
Oh, you heard about that already?
I absolutely heard about that, and I am so proud of you guys.
Wow! Who did Menzo tell you?
It was in the family plan. Yeah.
Did Steven?
Steven.
Trust Steven to put out all the news.
Yeah, no doubt. It's really good. Am I coming in clear to you guys? Everything good?
Yeah. Good for me. No.
Maybe it's me. Maybe it's my PC I'm on. You seemed a little glitchy to me, but maybe it's just me.
How about now?
Oh,
better.
I have to do this like Phil, because when I was at Phil's place, Phil would be up on it like this. No, we're gonna put the mouth guard up and be all legit. All right, so what do we got on board here tonight, kids?
We're getting this party started. All right, well, we got two different topics. Both of them are very, very vague indeed. By the way, Say Wong, if you have any information on why Silicon was canceled, I would love to know about that because I'm kind of bummed out about that. So I don't know, are you guys aware of Silicon? But out here in California, it is Silicon Valley. It used to be the Silicon Valley Con, and then Adam Savage of MythBusters took it over, and it's kind of a tech con now, which is kind of cool. It's on their website. Okay. Well, I guess that means we got to go to the website to find out. All right, gentlemen. Let's start with the fun one.
The fun one. Yay!
Yeah. I feel like this is like after we've been doing this show for a while, a lot of these topics like intertwine. I know this is definitely something we've mentioned before. I don't know if it's been its own separate heading. But
you suggested these two topics last week on the show.
Oh wow! Shows you how much I know, huh? Okay. Well, I wonder what exactly. Okay, video game violence. Well, there's definitely a lot to say about video game violence. First off, I seem to recall throughout history there being lots of violent wars. In long before there was Pong. So
I would like to ask you guys a question based upon what was happening 15 to 20 years ago. This is a question. When people think about video game violence, especially nowadays, I want to ask this question. Do you guys believe in any way, shape, or form that Rockstar Games, the people behind Grand Theft Auto, do you believe that they in any way, in any of their games, has contributed to people wanting to be more violent, to find violence more acceptable, to copycat the things that are done in Grand Theft Auto games? Do you think that Grand Theft Auto and Rockstar Games has contributed to worldly violence?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Okay. Van, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, only in as much as John Wick has, or Judas Priest has, or
Ozzy
any
Osbourne,
other, anything else. Hey, Thomas, what is going on?
Speaking of video games and all the love,
yeah, we definitely got to get Thomas's opinion in here on this too. Yeah, that is to say, no, not really. I mean, it's constantly right. We were just talking to Jerry Springer last week, right? How many like every episode is famous for people, getting into brawls on stage. So
that would be like, okay, so that would be also fair to ask, like, do you believe that Jerry Springer has contributed to domestic violence?
No, I think he helped create the media circus. I think he created people to, like I said last week, it was kind of like the TikTok before TikTok, where people were filming themselves being stupid on talk show TVs, daytime TV, versus on TikTok and Twitter and all that crap now, and Facebook. I think it's just the same media, but just a different generation, honestly. Because I don't think people, I mean, yes, there are going to be people that think it's real, just like some people think that wrestling's real. But it's all, it's scripted, it's drama, it's what sells, in the world. Unfortunately, I think you give people an excuse to say, "Hey, I'm gonna practice to be on Jerry Springer." They may have this little tiff. They're like, "Oh, my wife puts the fork in the spoon drawer," or something stupid like that.
Right.
And then, I think it's just a way for people to get noticed, to get attention, to try to get famous. I think that's what Jerry Springer alluded to and created with it.
So I thought it was really interesting that this is, I was like in my early 20s when this happened, but it's funny that you bring up talk shows like Springer. I want to say that on Maury, or I think a show like that, there was a parent who brought in their two young sons who were just completely out of control, and all they did was impersonate and get violent because they watched a lot of WWE. They would be impersonating Stone Cold and The Rock. So this guy went on a Springer type talk show claiming that Stone Cold and The Rock made their sons violent.
But who's letting him watch Stone Cold and The Rock?
Thank you. Thank you.
But to me, that's not any different than people complaining, that you can't have Spider-Man or Batman punching someone in the cartoon because they might replicate it, or people pretending they're Superman and jumping off their house thinking they
jumping
can
off
fly.
a building, right?
Right. It's the media has been here for 100 years now in this type of thing that we have that. But my dad grew up watching the Wild West shows with the cowboys and Indians with the gunslinger and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
They pretended
Bonanza.
to play, cowboys and Indians. They pretended to have the cap gun and stuff like that, but they didn't ever take it and think, hey, this is real. I need to then do this in real life. Now, fake playing, yes, but like the actual committing of shooting people, no, I don't think it caused any of that.
No. Right. I don't remember playing cops and robbers as a kid, leading to many of my friends becoming actual bank robbers as adults.
Now it hit the media big time. Like there was a big media outbreak against Rockstar Games, and Say Wong makes a really good point here. He says, former California State Senator Leland Yee, once upon a time led a campaign against violent video games. So if we're leading campaigns against violent games, why are we not leading against violent movies? Why are we not leading against violent? I mean,
they are.
But you have to see. Did you see Say Wong's next comment? I think that alludes to a lot of what you're asking right now.
Yeah.
Well, the big thing in the 90s was Mortal Kombat. We had the same argument in Mortal Kombat.
And the outpouring of review bombing against Sega, because Sega was the one that allowed the blood code, where Super Nintendo was the family-friendly clean system. Correct. But in Japan, Super Nintendo had all the hentai games. So they kept all that out of America. So neither system was innocent in terms of what developers they allowed to make games for them. Like everybody had their vice.
Well, if you really, really, really want to think about it, video games, even on the Atari 2600, there was porn games.
Dude, there was wasn't there a game about Hitler?
Yeah.
On the Atari 2600, and you were literally a Nazi and you were just randomly killing people?
Right. But I mean, that's the thing. It's, it's not really the publisher's fault. They're putting this stuff out there. Yes. And I think what's happening is, we've been talking about this for 30 years, especially since Mortal Kombat, is that it's parents, not understanding what their kids are playing. The kids aren't necessarily going to the store by themselves and buying these games. Right? They are now. But, this created the ESRB rating on video games, right? Was Mortal Kombat, because okay, we have to let parents know, because parents, unfortunately, aren't going to pay attention to the game that they're picking up for that, or a grandma's picking up Mortal Kombat 2 or something like that. And they put the restriction ratings on there. Now, we've had this for movies for quite some time. But it wasn't until 1984 that we had PG-13.
So let me take this back to a question that Van and Aubrey talked about at length. What was it, last week?
Yes.
When somebody makes a video game, or when a company makes a video game, or even if it's an indie game and it is put out to the public, is that not an artistic form of expression? That storytelling on that screen in that console, is that not another form of artistic expression? Meaning they put out a message, but they are not held responsible for what happens. Meaning a rapper can put out a CD saying how much he may want to off his wife, but he doesn't do it in real life. Well, you play a video game about a dude with a revenge plot, and he offs his wife in the game, and you do that in the game. Is that not the same? Is that not the same thing?
Well, yeah, it is the same thing, and you can still say that people get quite butthurt about kids seeing the statue of David. Right? There was just something this past week about a teacher or principal getting in trouble for that. It's been a piece of art for how long now? Hundreds of years. And
right, but little boys and girls are not allowed to know what genitalia are. So,
Yeah, because none of us played doctor growing up.
None of us go to the bathroom.
Right. I think it all comes down to the same thing. Is I was in high school during Columbine time, and it's they blamed music that I was actually listening to, and I don't think it's not as simplistic as this one piece of thing caused this whole issue that happened. It's not the case. It just so happened to be, they were listening to Marilyn Manson, they were listening to stuff like that,
Nirvana.
Yeah, and it's not that. I mean, there are unfortunately sick individuals that exist, and instead of us deflecting off of the mental health of it, of the gun control of it, we are looking for this one piece, the smoking gun, no pun intended there, of the thing that caused it for everybody. And I think that has to stop. We have to understand that parents are responsible. They need to be responsible. Also, we have to look at the mental health of individuals and gun control and all that stuff that goes into it. It's not a one all end all be all solution, but if I didn't play Mortal Kombat, none of this would happen. It's
right. You can't have somebody get on the stand and plead guilty and say Grand Theft Auto made me do it. It's all Rockstar Games' fault.
Can I just go? It was Justin Bieber. Like, can we just have people say Justin Bieber and just that can go away?
And to say Wong's bigger point, like I think a lot of times too, when these kind of things boil up, especially about topics that are just kind of like nothing, you know what I mean? Things that come up every 5 or 10 years with a different form. Yep. A lot of times you got to look at what else it's covering. You know what I mean? Is there a bigger story that's happening that they're trying to divert your attention away from with this, this garbage news?
Typically, what bill is getting passed while, Will Smith slaps Chris Rock in the face?
Right. So,
hi, Mrs. Forrest.
Hi. Sorry I was late. I had to finish some stuff. And I'm also tearing apart my room. So this has been fun. Anyways, I was going to say, I've actually done research on this, on video game violence. Like I said before, on last week's show, is that violence in video games on the whole do not create more violence. They don't. And this has been numerous studies over the years, especially after Columbine and all that. They did studies, and they've continued doing studies, and they have shown that people who play violent video games, often that is not a factor if they end up going and going out and doing violence. In fact, it is known, and his study has actually clearly shown that it actually lessens the likelihood of them going out and causing and doing violence, because oftentimes they're able to play out their aggression on the video game. It's actually beneficial and helpful for these people to have that violence. That being said, I mean, of course, if you're doing like online games or stuff, I mean, there's still going to be aggression that happens, and that's, in those type of online playing games. And if you're playing with other people, you're still interacting with other people, and you can be way more aggressive to those people online, especially male players versus female players. That is something that actually does occur across gender studies of that women are more subjected to violence perpetrated by male players when they are playing a video game, and harassment if they find out the player is female. And there's a whole bunch of studies that go into that. But in terms of violence towards people playing a video game and that causing them to go out and perpetrate violence is actually less than them being caught, like them being the main factor in people who go out and create violence. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So, I mean, this is something I did actual research and did a whole paper on. So,
yeah, I definitely don't think it's, an overall contributor. Like I said, violence has been happening since the beginning of human beings, long before there was video games. And they, if you watch, the ancient tortures and stuff, they were doing far more horrible things than you see in a lot of these video games. I think anything can be an inspiration, though, just because, I remember back in the 80s, there was that whole Judas Priest thing. where they
Right.
were trying to sue Judas Priest because somebody committed suicide or something like that, and they had been listening to their albums or something. You know, I don't know. Anything can be an inspiration, or even Catcher in the Rye. We can take it even further back. Who was it? Wasn't there somebody that killed Dillinger? Killed somebody after reading Catcher in the Rye, and now they're trying to ban Catcher in the Rye. Well, not now, but that's
that was in the 80s
ongoing.
when they tried to ban it. I mean, they've been trying to ban books forever, but yes, that is a huge thing that people have been trying to do forever. So I actually have a study that got looked up. This is from 2002, 2004. And it talks about the different, the hypothesis, which is experimental research is shown that playing violent video games. Oh, this is interesting. So this is interesting. Okay. I'm like rereading it here. This one is really interesting. So the abstract thing that they've shown is that experimental research has been shown playing violent video games produce higher levels of aggression, cognition, aggressive effect, psychological arousal, and aggressive behavior in the short term than non-violent video games. However, there are two major limitations with these investigations. First, the majority of experimental studies that have compared the effects of violent versus nonviolent games on aggression and failed to equate these games in terms of competitiveness, difficulty, and pace of action. Therefore, although the common finding is that violent video games produce higher levels of aggression than nonviolent video games, other unmatched factors beyond the actual violent content may be responsible for elevated levels of aggression. Second, previous experimental studies have tended to use the measure of aggression that may also measure competitiveness, leading to questions about whether violent video games are related to aggression or competitiveness. After describing these two limitations, how future research can address these gaps in violent video games literature and why this research is important are discussed. So it's basically saying, like, yes, they have shown higher levels of aggression, but that also is the same as also that they're not putting into account the level of competitiveness. Now, this is a study that was released in 2004 that they go into it, but that's like basically the thesis of it. So they're basically saying that previous research that has shown that there are elevated aggressiveness are completely are being biased, basically, that they're not putting in these other factors in there to show, they're not putting a control group, for instance. So it goes into further them. But one of the interesting things that I thought was interesting is the influence of violent versus nonviolent video games on aggression. Experimental studies examining the short-term effects of violent video games on aggression have typically involved randomly assigning participants to play either a violent or non-violent video game, followed by a measure of aggression. E.g., so this is actually, I am incorrect. This is actually a later one. So this actually was released in, where is it? In 2012, I think. 2010. Sorry. So I had to double check this.
Force has a question.
Yes.
So here's something interesting. And I want to know if all of you I want to know if you guys believe this to be possible, because this just hit me. Is it possible that video game violence could result in a triggering, which in that the triggering in that individual could cause a maladaptive behavior? Like people can get triggered by certain things, especially when we're talking about things like PTSD or Mrs. Flores, when you were talking about, is it CPTSD?
CPTSD, yeah.
Okay, so people who experience those types of former traumas, is it possible that video game violence could be triggering to an individual that would then result in a maladaptive behavior?
So from what I've seen, the thing that it's really interesting is one of the therapies that they have for PTSD in veterans actually is going through and playing a video game that resimulates what caused the PTSD, actually, as a way of curing it. or at least treating it. That's one of the things that they do. So it is very interesting that the what I'm saying is it can be triggering, but it also can be actually beneficial and even therapeutic.
Okay.
For these certain things, and it just depends on what the triggers are. And
case in point, Bad Touch Dave.
Yes, there is, but it's also therapeutic when you get them at the end.
It is, but again, you've got to, if you have a game that has an individual who plays, who is a violent individual and enacts violence in a very victimizing way. I guess we could use that definition. And again, that goes back to my question: could that visualization cause a trigger, which could then result in a behavior that is non-constructive?
Absolutely, because that is a factor in like maladaptive coping strategies or coping mechanisms that have to do with the person already is imbalanced. They already are having PTSD, or they're already having, a problem, a mental illness, and that can absolutely cause them to become more violent. But it's not the video games itself. It has to do with the surrounding factors in there on top of playing the aggressive video game.
In the environment.
So then let me ask a question over to Husbeard.
Yes.
With that situation in mind, when you have games that actually play out very specific, what could be traumatizing either cinema scenes or actions that the player will take themselves, do you think there is enough warning on the packaging for many of these games that are out right now?
Yeah, I mean, the problem with triggers is you don't know what it's going to be, so you can't just outright ban everything. Yeah, it's such a small percentage, unfortunately. Fortunately, that it's not going to be a thing. Like, if you know that you have maybe some PTSD from war, should you play Call of Duty?
Right.
Probably not.
But I'm thinking more along the lines of being more specific in the rating system, because many of the things that they have, even in the games, typically they'll have graphic language, graphic violence, gore, and nudity. But do you think it would be necessary moving forward, given the fact that many people like to play the game made me do it card? Would it be helpful, especially to parents, if you have the content that could read out, this game contains the aforementioned, and then a scene of sexual assault, or a scene of domestic violence, or a scene of heavy narcotic usage? Like, those things being listed, would that be helpful to parents or people deciding, is this game for me or not?
You're asking like the same thing that you have in front of a movie that's, say, on HBO Max, that has like the LV and all those things for video games.
Would that be helpful in your opinion?
It may, but especially as kids are older, you're also going to let them know that's there too. So you're going to look for the strong, suggestive adult content and stuff like that. For parents, yes, but I think if your kid's asking for something, it's much different now in today's world to know what the game's like. There's so many trailers, there's so many gameplay footage, so many demos, versus, and this is something we discuss on the podcast a lot, is when in the 80s and 90s, you didn't know what the movies were like. All you had was the box to look at, and that wasn't enough information.
Right.
Now we have the internet. Now we can know much,
and,
especially the game.
And let's be brutally honest. Back in 1998, people on HBO or who had HBO were not ready for Oz. I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah.
There was not enough warning for what Oz contained. So I'm actually speaking to more situations that contain lots of gratuitous content like that. Should parents be more aware? Should we be more aware on the packaging what a particular game is going to have in it?
So you're going to end up with a list of books, because Stranger Things has, hey, it's the 80s in Indiana, people smoke. Well, no shit. All right.
You're
Yep.
not wrong.
Exactly.
We know that, and I don't think it needs to be listed out. What I think they could do is have QR codes that have gameplay demos that you can have on the package and listen to everything out. You have a QR code.
Yes.
Your phone.
Thank you.
Wow, that's
has
an
their
interesting
rating,
idea.
and then links to gameplay and trailer and stuff like that. So parents can just go, boop, there you go. You don't even have to look it up.
Formulated on Kyber Cave, ladies and gentlemen.
Trademark, patent pending. No, it's in today's day. There's no reason in today's world to not know the game. You're not going to the store and picking up this game just off the box art. Parents aren't doing that either. The kids know. The parents have the ability to research.
And day one, a YouTuber is going to have a brand new game half done.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what it is. People on YouTube already have Tears of the King to beat, and it's not out till next Friday.
Right, but I'm just saying you don't want it to go into YouTube players. You want it to go into the company itself. So if the company's putting it out, they make the QR code, and then they are responsible for the content that's linked to the QR code.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for answering my question. I just wanted to know what
I dig it. What about games that are downloaded?
You have to be over a certain age to consent. It has to be tied to your credit card. It's not the kid's credit card; it's the parent's credit card. Don't link your credit card to your kid's console. That's simple. Yeah. And there's also trailers, and it has all that stuff on there too. It's already in place. The methods are in place. So, it's. For me, it's different. Obviously, I love horror movies, and this has always been a big discussion: is when do I introduce stuff like this to my kids? I was really young when I first saw Child's Play. I was like 4. I turned out perfectly fine. Oh,
yes, you did.
I mean, one of my sister's like skits was us being left alone to watch scary movies. Mm-hmm. And that whole thing of like, Paris just left on the television and then left. And then we got left with things like Monster Squad. Yeah, try watching that at 9 and seeing how that turns you out.
When you're sick.
Right.
I agree. Monster Squad was like 4 or 5 when that completely inaccurate to the lore of the creatures.
Shut up. Wolfman has nards. Quiet. But anyways, I'm just saying, like, as a joke, like that's like, her or like being left and watching like Children of the Corn. Or things that are I was like, what, 4 when I saw that the first time? Mm-hmm. So it's like, and then watching like Night of the Living Dead when I was like 9 or 10. I mean, that's still, of course, my mom was there for that one, but like, you don't know how these effects are going to affect someone. Like I turned out, I think, completely fine. I'm not aggressive at all. It's not like I go and fight with swords or anything.
Bullshit. How's your nose feel?
But
wow.
No, that was well played. Well played.
Like I enjoy
these are all things that are, I think, part of our environment. And if you don't get it from video games, you're gonna get it from music. And if you don't get it from music, you're gonna get it from movies. And if you don't get it from movies, you're gonna get it from your next door neighbor. I mean, it's just part of human nature and humanity.
And honestly, real life is so much more violent than a lot of things in video games.
Oh yeah.
But here's something I was gonna say is that media often portrays, anything that's deemed as like counterculture or as like not media friendly as a reason for why people perpetuate violence. And that's usually what gets up. It's not like, oh, bullying at school like caused this. It's like, oh, this kid was playing violent video games. Mm-hmm. It's like that's what's causing it. And really it's kind of, as an analogy, it's kind of like blaming pit bulls for the majority of dog violence when actually it isn't pit bulls. It's just media has shown that media shows pit bulls being more likely as the reason of dog violence when they are actually like 3rd or 4th on the list of actual aggressive dogs.
I love my
they're even far more down than that.
Mean ones in my day, so
somewhat.
I said I love labs, but I've seen some mean ones in my day.
It's
not golden retrievers are actually more violent and aggressive than pit bulls, and so are like German shepherds and some other of those breeds.
It's all in the training and the treatment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Van, where'd you go?
Let's go, Van.
I gotta plug in my computer real quick. My battery's dying.
Because Graveyard and I are getting sick of running shows.
Wow. Well, Aubrey's here too. Give me a second. Let me plug in the computer.
I'm here too, guys. What the heck?
So then, all right. So let me ask this question. What do you, when it comes to gaming, what are y'all's opinions on something something gratuitous like torture? Like how invested you got to be to get into a game and really just kind of enjoy? Because there's a lot of games there that you could either torture the crap out of somebody, or there's plenty of cinematic scenes where people are just being straight up tortured. Now, obviously, if it's something that's going to break your heart, they show that for the story's sake, of course. But there are games out there, and Graveyard, I know you know this, that you can just straight torture some people. Is that stuff necessary? Is it an artistic form of expression by the creator? How do we look at that?
I mean, torture porn is a thing.
It is a thing. Totally.
It's a thing. And do I agree necessarily with it? No. But I mean, I do think there is a point. I think when you have pointless violence, that's kind of a desensitizing factor. I mean, I don't really like a lot of violence anyways, but I understand if it's necessary for a story, yes, absolutely go with it. But if you're just having gratuitous violence or gratuitous whatever,
I don't know there, Mrs. Forrest. I remember somebody enjoying the hell out of putting holes in people after they killed a horse.
They had it coming. They had it coming. They only have themselves to blame.
Oh,
that's exactly what I have to say about that. If you had been there, if you had seen it,
and you can on our channel.
The same.
Oh, and we got so much.
No horse violence. Horses, like, if you shoot a horse, you are dead.
Just prepare yourself.
Prepare to meet death.
Prepare yourself. So yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So torture porn is a thing. It's like there's a porn for everything. But
there it is. I mean, Michael Bay just went like porn it, and everything's porn. Sorry, couldn't help myself. I heard that. It's another
Van. Have we violently beat game violence into the ground at this point?
No.
Well, let me ask you guys this: when did you find it acceptable for your kids to play these games?
See,
so my son was playing Gears of War at age 11, and he handled it just fine. And I actually sat with him and I said, okay, you're going to see bullets spread from this gun and take this dude's face off. I'm just warning you. Are you okay with that? And his response was, Daddy, I've seen YouTube. Let's play. And I played the game with him, and we shot the heads off of aliens. And he's like, cool. Okay.
I mean,
and he's a perfectly normal boy, as normal as any member of my family can get. But yeah. 11. And he was cutting down moblins in Zelda at 7.
I don't have kids, but I do have nieces and nephews, and it just depends on, I think, parental guidance and like what you allow with your kids. I think, like, my sister, for instance, doesn't. Again, they have YouTube. YouTube is a thing, but she doesn't really like to have the. It's hard to decipher a lot of that, because it's like, how much should you show your kids versus when, how old, and all that. Like, certain kids can see that and be fine, whereas other kids can't.
Right. And I think what it comes down to is the individual maturity of the child.
And the adult.
Too. I mean, I guess there's certain things that an adult can't tolerate, and that's going to be passed down to a child as well. If a parent is squeamish about things and they don't allow their children to see it because it scares the hell out of them, obviously their kids are going to have, more of fear towards things. But I know with my son, some of the more mature games, like a GTA or something like that, his older cousins and, older brother was playing. He has a brother that's 9 years older than him. So they were playing it. And with my kid, he kind of knew his own limits. And so he didn't really have a desire to play things that he thought were too scary for him at the time. So, I kind of gauged it on him and also what I thought his maturity was. At no point did he ever think that any of this, in our discussions, did he think this was real. He understood this was just like a movie that you could control. You know what I mean? So, I think it has to do with the individual maturity of the child.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. It is dependent on the child and the parent, and make sure that they understand it. It's was when I was 11, was I playing Doom? Yes, I was killing.
Yes,
demons,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
And I didn't think anything was I playing Splatterhouse. Absolutely, it's always been there. It's always going to be there. And like I said, I don't think you should ever get rid of the art medium because it affects such a small population of the people.
Yes.
You can't, as much as we want to cater to the smallest denominator, we have to cater to the majority. So do we want to say outright ban all this stuff because you don't like it? Maybe, but I don't like Fortnite. Should I ban Fortnite?
Well, here's something that I will.
Yes, we should. It's clearly a stupid game.
Whatever.
Terrible.
Here's what I'll propose to it to this. So now I totally lost it. So is it better to completely shelter a child from any sort of things to that? To like in terms of like video games and them not being prepared for how things may work in a society that can be violent versus showing them the ugliness of what can happen, prepare them for that. Is it better to leave them in complete naivety, or is it better to show them as they are growing up, these are things that can happen and you should prepare for that?
As someone that was a sheltered child, I would say no, you should not shelter them. Because growing up, I wasn't allowed to have GI Joes because they used guns.
Okay.
Yeah. Turtles was a huge thing for me to be able to get. When
were you raised LDS there, Matt?
What was that?
I'm just joking. I'm kidding.
I know where that came from.
I know. You do.
So, when Sex and the City started, was that like 1999? I was 15. My mom in the TV guide took a Sharpie marker and crossed off the word sex. I was 15.
Wow.
And at that point in time, I already had two nieces and a nephew from my older sisters. They both had kids at 17. So I'm like, what are we doing here?
Wow, that is a bit overprotective.
So
yes.
in terms
and
of
that's how it is.
In terms of what she just said, I'm going to take Mrs. Forrest back to 2 weeks ago when we discussed this very thing, and we said education is the most important thing we can do.
Yes.
There needs to be a forewarning. There needs to be that lesson of okay. And Cam, this is all for you, buddy. Avoid. It's all about the education. I was not going to sit there and let my son play Gears of War without telling him, all right, kiddo, well, here's the deal. This dude's head's going to get blown off. This is a gun that's going to do it. You're going to see this. And then he tells me, well, I've seen YouTube. Okay, well, and then I'm going to sit with him and I'm going to either play the game with him or watch him play the game so that if he freaks out or has questions, I'm right there to either answer them, educate him. And if I don't know the answer, well, then damn, I'll look it up. Because I know.
I think that the more likely that you don't know about something, I think the more likelihood you are to be taken advantage by it.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
And that's really what I think people who are talking about, or banning violent video games or banning books, because it's kind of the same line, or banning certain TV. I do think that there is there's a danger of uneducating people to those dangers. Do I think that gratuitous violence should be shown on TV? No. Do I think gratuitous sex should be shown on TV? It's kind of more like what the level of maturity is.
Yeah.
I do know that, in America, we tend to have violence as being like a more gratuitous violence than other parts of the world, which does kind of correlate to us being more violent in general. of people, but you also have to look at, we also have a lot more Puritan mindset, which also makes us a lot more violent, unfortunately, than other places of the world. But if we are going to have violence, we need to educate kids or even ourselves about why that violence takes place and what are the causes of it.
Now, I have a question for both you and for the husband.
Mm-hmm.
And husband, I'm going to give you the spotlight on this one. So, considering what she just said, considering the fact that as we as a nation are more prone to have the more violent content, do you believe that in the future and continuing on, we are going to create things that are more and more and more unexpected and shocking for the sake of shock value, so that those things can then become normalized as we are normalized now?
So you think if we make every movie like Saw, then eventually that becomes the norm, and we'll have to do a more extravagant thing?
That's kind of an extreme, but every so often, like once every couple of years, we'll get a horror movie or an action movie that'll have something that just catches us off guard, and it's like, ugh, or it kind of makes a few people sick. It's like the shock value just continues to go up and up. So, do you think that these directors and writers are more inclined as time moves forward, as we become more normalized to what we currently have? Basically, are we going to continue to experience this increasing level of shock value?
I don't think so, because in the horror movie world right now, slashers are dead. Slashers have always had the biggest body count, had the most over top kills for their time, and they are video nasties of the 80s and England and all that stuff. They banned so much of it. And yeah, it's a wave. It's a cycle.
I think it's cyclical.
Can I provide an example? Can I ask you about? Can I throw an example out there and ask your opinion on it?
Yeah,
it's classic, but they always find a new way to do it and freak people out, and that is the jump scare.
Mm-hmm.
The jump scare never seems to die. But there's always some sort of new, shocking, gratuitous, nasty, gory, shocking way they just continue to do it, and it always catches somebody, and it gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse with every generation.
I don't think it gets worse. I think it's a sign of lazy writing, because they can't make an atmospheric movie that's scary, so they have to do. If you cannot write a horror movie well enough, you do jump scares.
I would think, well, that's partially true, but they also have had things where they literally use it. It has to do with like saturation and market, and so even in like the 60s and 70s, you had like Vincent Price movies, or you had these horror movies that legitimately had like a gimmick, like the Tingler would actually put shock, but they would put like under the seats, they would actually have these shock things that would at certain points like actually activate to shock people in the audience as part of the jump scare.
Oh my God.
We don't do that now. So this has been, so these are cyclical. These are things that have been what?
Yeah.
Well, come on, you know that is true.
Actually, we're back to 4D movies now. So
we are.
But so as an example, all right, this video game series has been out for like 10 plus years. Back to video games, Five Nights at Freddy's. It is nothing but a jump scare game with literally hundreds of different types of jump scares, and it freaks people the hell out.
But then also you got to look for that time period. You're talking about 10 years plus. At that
they're
time
still
period,
making stuff like that.
Well, no, wait. What I'm saying is that time period, that was really popular genre of gaming too, just in general. I remember there was another game that was similar, but you were in a bedroom or something, and you had to look at the window, and you had to look at the door, and you had to look at the closet.
Corey Kenshin played those games, yeah.
Right. My kid used to watch a lot of those types of games at that time period in general.
Yes.
But you just said the key word there, Ark. Kids.
Is that your cat?
Sorry, yes.
No,
because I know adults play Five Nights at Freddy's and they do it for YouTube content. My kids play Five Nights at Freddy's because it's good horror. It's the easy way to jump scare them and scare them without showing the gratuitous violence or anything like that.
Yes.
So
it can be freaky, and
it's like the next level of Goosebumps.
Yeah, I mean we had Goosebumps. They did that kind of thing, and we had
Even Are You Afraid of the Dark did it a
Are
couple
You
times
Afraid?
on
Oh,
Oh my God,
absolutely.
Are You Afraid
Nickelodeon.
of the Dark? I love
Absolutely.
that
And
show
like I
too.
said, it's
Oh
like I
right,
said,
it's good, right?
5
They
jump
do it in a good
scares.
way.
Yeah, but jump scares,
Agreed.
that's the entire game of Five Nights at Freddy. They are using it so much, it is a way to create suspense because you generally get visual and audio cues in horror movies that you have the creepy violence string. You have every time someone opens up a refrigerator door or a bathroom, you expect there to be something there when they close it. Now it's becoming more likely that nothing's there now because it's the illusion of the jump scare. You're building up the tension to have that feeling of it. And that's why you play these games. That's why you play violence. You get that rush and you want to put yourself in that fight or flight situation without actually being in it. So that's why we do it. And so I think video games are the same way. It's your trigger response and seeing how well you can react to it. And video games that have more action where people that have recovering from strokes or stuff like that helps people with their cognitive abilities come back because they are able to react to things in a faster way because you're triggering that fight or flight.
Yeah, it comes back to having vets like army veterans or military veterans as a blanket. The part of that thing that they do to help veterans is they will put them in simulated game scenarios to help them relive the traumatic experience so that because what's happening when you have PTSD is that your brain it gets triggered and so it thinks it's back in that place, whereas there's no problem with your body. And the way that to help that person with the PTSD, it's kind of re-putting them in that place so that they can work out what the PTSD is and work out like living through, like not necessarily living through the trauma all over again, but it's resolving the trauma in the body so that the mind,
play through their situation differently in their head so they can get through their current trauma. It doesn't change anything, but it at least helps to give them some personal closure.
Yes. It alleviates the need for the closure, and it alleviates like some people's PTSD is like, I could have done something. If I had done something, this person would still be alive. And if you go through those scenarios, it's like, in a way, it kind of shows to them like there was nothing you could have done in that moment to change the outcome of what happened. So you could have done everything right? And this outcome still would have happened. And that is a way that they use that therapy in those traumatic situations. It's really psychology.
I want to pose you guys this because I do play Destiny and stuff like that. I do play first-person shooters. I typically don't play, and I don't know why, I don't play games where I shoot people. If it's robots or aliens or creatures, do we find that more acceptable than people violence?
Absolutely. I'm going to tell you why. Because I can take you back to the 1980s Ninja Turtles. They only used their weapons and struck enemies with weapons if the weapons were robotic.
Yeah.
They never hit other human beings.
They did that with Star Wars too.
And they did that with X-Men. That was a big thing. As I said before.
Wolverine never touched a human.
Some building was going to be decimated, but he would just get knocked the F out.
Famously in G.I. Joe, anytime an airplane blew up, there was always an ejection seat.
Yep. I can see their parachutes.
Yeah,
up until anime got really here in America, they didn't have a lot of human on human violence.
Nope.
But that had to do with that was also why there was rules against do you remember when there was the cartoon Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends?
Yes.
And one of them was Morbius. And Morbius in the cartoon had these weird suction cup hands or whatever.
That was the animated series from the 90s.
Yeah, that's the 90s series. Yeah, I can remember very distinctly.
That's because with the laws at the time with children's programming, you couldn't have vampires. Or you couldn't have somebody sucking out blood. So they had to come up with this weird.
And he didn't suck blood. He sucked plasma. He said, I need plasma.
Yeah. And really, it wasn't until Batman the Animated Series and X-Men that we saw mortal living beings not using weapons, but literally beating the crap out of each other bare-fisted and actually taking a lot of damage.
Now, here's something that's really interesting. Before the Hays Code, we had actually a lot more violence in movies and such too. But it was the Hays Code that stymied a lot of that and made it so there were rules about what could be shown on TV and movies, and actually really stymied a lot of creativity.
Specifically in relation to the May 4th, George Lucas, when he was making the prequels, specifically made the droids and wanted them. That's why they look very like kind of skeletal. But he wanted the robots so that the Jedi's could cut them in half with their lightsabers, and not have a human enemy or right.
How many human armies do the Avengers face versus sky beams and aliens and robots?
That's a very, very good point. That's a very.
We still don't do that.
I want to ask you guys one last question before we transition over. Van, I know your son plays a lot of games. Mrs. Fours, you and I play. Graveyard, you play a lot of games. If you guys were to pick out a favorite game that has lots of video game violence, what would your pick of poison be?
That depends. That depends on the mood I'm in.
Y'all already know my answer.
I got sick of the Saw games that existed because they were just awful.
The what games?
Saw.
Oh,
I don't like Saw anyways. I don't like torture porn in any. Like I don't like mindless horror.
That's why I won't watch Drag Me to Hell.
Mindless torture, just because like I find that not only distasteful, but it does tend to trigger me. So I can't actually watch that because it doesn't make any sense to me. I find torture and trauma to be very needless if there's no reason to it. And yes, Saw supposedly has a reason, but you're also following people who are very quote unquote unlikable in the first place, and you have to watch them get out of terrible, terrible situations. You're like, I don't want to see that for anybody. Like, do I want to go and play a video game where I basically have to live out this person that gets tortured like in Hostel? No, I don't. I don't want to.
I don't want to watch flesh being torn from a bone. That's just like I can't with that.
But if I am playing something like Mass Effect, which does have a lot of violence in it,
here we go.
I'm totally okay with that because that's fine because it has a time and a place. Same with any game like Silent Hill or any horror game that I love. It's because there's a reason, there's a time and a place, and it's all to serve the story. That is what is really important to me. And even in games like Five Nights at Freddy's, there is a story. And this is all not just needless and pointless violence. I don't like pointless violence.
Are you saying there's lore?
There is the lore.
I'm on the other side of the table. I don't do a lot of gaming, but I sit in the kitchen and watch my son play a lot. He has a game on Xbox that it's one of my favorites that he has. It's just pointless gore and violence. There's no reason for it. I think it's called Dead by Daylight or something, but it's basically you're a team of like 4 people and there's like an axe murder or something. You have to survive the night and turn on these generators and escape the is that what it's called?
How is that pointless? How is that pointless?
I like it because it just reminds me of all the the 80s movie tropes, and even like some of the characters are even they have like a symbiote character on there, and some of the classic horror characters you can play as Michael Myers, I think.
And there's a Friday the 13th that was made in the exact same engine and style.
Oh,
but
really?
I don't find that to be unnecessary or gratuitous, like violence in some cases, though. I mean, they're telling a story and it does serve the story. A movie like Hostel or a game where you just pointlessly go and torture people, to me, that is not, or that there's no meaning behind someone being tortured or whatever. Yes, that may be true to real life, but it also is something I don't want to necessarily associate with unless the story is really good.
But
I don't. I don't like meaningless violence.
But if this is the same game I think he's talking about, I think this is the one where it's 4 players, 3 players. You have to get away. 1 plays the killer, and it's a round game.
Is it like Among Us?
Kind of. So when you play the killer, you're gonna grab the people who are running away, and you're gonna put them up on a meat hook.
On a hook, right? Yeah, exactly.
So
and you can go and help your friend, and you can like heal your friend, but the killer's constantly. So the killer's job, Aubrey, is to keep the people from starting these generators, fixing these generators, so that they can get out a trap door and escape from the killer. Right? One person goes around and is the killer, and then the other 3 have to turn on the generator and help each other. But sometimes he'll put them on like meat hooks, and you can go and help your friend get off the meat hook.
Leia, you're so cute.
She sees you. That's what it is.
Yeah, I'm like giving her the heart back.
You're off the internet.
I'm broken. She broke me. Anyways.
So it's but that was the point I was trying to make. Like it's literally you're playing rounds with your friends, and you're putting your friends on meat hooks, and you're slashing them, and you're killing them, and it's gratuitous, and it's over and over and over and over and over again.
Right, and I love it.
Yeah, and that's okay. Like, my yuck. I'm not going to yuck your young. I'm just saying, for me, that is my yuck. I just don't like seeing that.
Right,
personally, for me,
genres for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to yuck your young though, but if it's fine by you, like absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just someone who I like meaningful violence.
Right.
If that makes sense.
All right, and I think on that note, speaking of meaningful violence and gratuitous violence, we should go over to the next topic.
What's Graveyard's favorite and what's my favorite?
Well, it's Vampires. And
gratuitous violence. I mean, I really enjoyed playing through Callisto Protocol and just dismembering people to no end.
That was fun.
Callisto Protocol.
Callisto Protocol. Yeah, we were.
Oh yes, Callisto Protocol. Okay, yeah.
Remember the river of shit?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no thanks.
And
that was way more PTSD and triggering than anything else. Great, I have to go wave to shit. Fantastic. I just dealt with that not too long ago.
And for me, of course, Last of Us and Last of Us 2. All right, moving on.
Yeah. Anyway.
Education, man.
Speaking of educating people on things that are important.
Here we go.
Speaking of schooling people. All right, man, what do you got?
Oh, it's me. I'm schooling people. Oh, okay.
School us, leader.
Well, this you mentioned this last week. Because when we were talking about this, we offshot into video game violence and then bullying in the education system and where their responsibility is and how to hopefully help it. That's what we mentioned last week when you said
that.
we have topics that create topics that create topics.
I mean, we don't ever get off topic ever.
Don't.
Yeah. So thoughts on education, I guess. So you were saying it had to do with bullying?
Yeah, we were talking about because we were talking about our topic last week. We're talking about how the education with how we treated our sons and daughters differently and bullying and stuff like that. And what we can do in the education system to help alleviate this if possible.
Right. Well, okay. Thank you. Yeah, I do remember talking about the diapering when I was working at the preschool, and how even with 6-month-old babies, we would ask their permission before we touched them, and diaper them, and that was just to get them in the mindset that you should always be in control of your own body, and at no point does anybody else have control of your body. I'd like to pose this question. A lot of times, I've seen this meme, and maybe this is probably greatly off of topic, but we're gonna go here anyways.
Question, brother.
I've seen this memes where they were like, instead of teaching me algebra or something, the school should have taught me how to use a checkbook, or how to do laundry and stuff. Where is the school's? What do you guys think is the school's purpose, and where does that line stop? Like, what should be something that a family and family values should teach a child, and what is the purpose of education? What should be taught in a school environment that everybody should know?
Not how to write APA paper. That's stupid.
What? What are you talking about? Shush. Those are great.
How often do I use that in my day-to-day life? Never.
Right.
I mean, I use it. We're using it. You can use it right now in what you're using here. This is a good platform for using APA writing.
I guess if
And
we
if
were
you go into any of the sciences, you're going to want to know how to do it.
Well, I mean, to Eric's point, we in econ we were taught how to balance a checkbook.
Yeah.
Were you guys not?
Civics and also in government. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
Florida.
that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Well, checkbooks don't really exist anymore either.
Hey, I learned how to do that. Like in my math, in business math, I was taught how to do
Common Core
taxes.
math. Yeah, right. And then things like, when I was a kid, we had wood shop. You know what I mean? There was home ec, so there was a cooking class, basically. So there were a few more, I guess, life type of classes as opposed to just, like Cam saying, Common Core math. And, a lot of times now in education, it's not even about truly educating person, like that they were talking about the no child left behind. I call it the no child left standing. But when we had to do that, teachers were complaining that they were no longer able to educate children. They were just teaching them to get them ready for a test. And that's all it was about, was passing this damn test so that the school can get funding. All of their jobs were on their line. Their livelihood depended on it.
My teachers had to deal with that, and that was a big problem. And I remember them complaining about it, especially my English teacher. She's like, "Oh my gosh, we could only teach this little bit of books, and now I can't teach Shakespeare and do all these things and teach about language." And she was having a huge issue with it. But I was part of an academy called the IHTA Academy, and that was something that was supposed to prepare you for the real world. So I learned things such as working in a restaurant and how to fill out a resume and how to write letters for resumes for potential job places, and we learned a lot of different things like that. So that was something that was actually really useful in my school. But we were doing things. This is before No Child Left Behind really went into effect, and they ended up changing a lot of things. And now even the IHTA just got canceled this year. Unfortunately, my high school, I'm still in touch with a lot of the teachers, and including the teacher that still works there, who was there when I went to school. They just canceled it, and he was trying to save it. And it's really actually it's a really sad thing, actually. Because
I honestly, and this one, I have to be very, very careful what I say here because of the type of job position that I have, and not wanting to lose that job position.
Yes.
In our modern culture of cancel cultures. But I often wonder, what is the purpose, or what is the what the fuck are we really doing here, dude? You know what I mean? Like I'm in the classroom 6 hours a day, and I'm like, what the fuck are we doing here? I don't want to disparage too much, but there are often times, and people can say this for every classroom, not just the classroom that I teach in, not just the classrooms in the school that I teach at, but a lot of the classrooms across the country where teachers' idea of education, and sometimes it's the funding's fault, right? There are so many places right now that can't get teachers that have actually been taught how to teach. So they're getting, anybody they can to come in and fill these teaching jobs. And so because they don't know how to actually teach, they're pushing out paperwork, right? That's some teachers' idea of, my kids are learning because they can do, 5 + 7 on a piece of paper. You know what I mean? And I can just sit there, behind my desk for 45 minutes while we have math time. And math time is just, here's your packet today. You know what I mean? No real interaction or what I would deem as real education. Again, I'm not saying this about, I'm just saying this as a blanket statement for many situations. Some people have much better teachers and who are much more devoted and much more passionate. But I think teaching has to come from a hands-on situation. You know what I mean? You don't learn about science through reading a goddamn packet about earthquakes. You learn about science by putting your hands in some fucking frogs.
Well, I mean,
what's up, James?
I think a lot has to do with, like, if you really look at elementary school and junior high school. Elementary school is to teach you the 4 fundamentals of language, of writing, of math, the stuff that unfortunately you look at our country is lacking in adults. But
literacy is falling quite a bit, which is
and college is for teaching you how to pick a career, how to get into stuff like that. Now, I think what high school should be is not to continue to push to get to AP calculus, AP chemistry, because most people aren't going to use that. I took physics. Do I use that? Am I supposed to use it? Yes, I am for my job, because when I put in servers into a room, I should know how much HVAC equipment is in the room requirement to offset the heat and power requirements and stuff like that. But what school should be for, especially high school, is not to necessarily pound all this information into people's head. It is to get people to critically think and problem solve. That's what it really should be about, is because the problem solving skills is the most important, and is really to I think to get people to drive to want to learn, because you can go, I don't know how to do something, and they just go, well, I guess I'll never know it. I have this huge drive to learn, and that's why I do what I do in my career, is because there's always so new technology. There's something new for me to learn all the time.
Shit's about to get political, because I honestly, again, being within the school system, I honestly believe, and I'm not the only teacher that believes this, but school and education, if you look at the history of the United States, was never ever intended for people to be able to think on their own and for them to have their own thoughts. The purpose of schools was built right before, around the time of industrialization. And the purpose of school at that time was to get these farmers that were coming into the big cities looking for jobs and opportunities, who had no real education or knowledge of how to run these equipment, to get them smart enough to run the factory floor equipment, but not smart enough that they could actually decide, you know what, I could actually own this factory. I could open my own factory. They want him smart enough that they could work for them, but not smart enough that they could build their own opportunities. And I honestly think that's a big problem with the foundation of American education, is it's not about teaching kids to actually think on their own. And honestly, do you really think, like, these high-end, like, Ivy School, people, do you think that the billionaires and multimillionaires in our country, do you think that they're telling their kids that they need to work hard so they can go to high school and graduate, and go to college and graduate, go work for a company for 30 years, and maybe they can make it to vice president? That's not what they're teaching their kids at all. They're teaching their kids how to control our kids. They're teaching their kids how to be upper management for companies that they will never have to work their way up to. They just get put right into that seat because of nepotism. And our children are being taught how to be controlled by those people. That's why if you look at it, the school's day, the way the school day is broken out, is very similar to the way a prison is structured.
Well, isn't prison supposed to be the education system too?
I don't know about. I don't think legalized torture is education.
I think so, Van. I agree with you on a lot of points. I will say, though, that education is a byproduct of the age. Why is Matt? Okay. I would say that education and the basis of education, especially in terms of historically, when we got out of, the Middle Ages and all that, yes, absolutely, a form of control with the church and all that. I'm not going to get super into it, but the idea of when the Age of Enlightenment hit, we had a big uptick in the way that people lived and learned things, that became a big basis in why we had that uptick of technological advances and all these things, because we were teaching people not just to work at these factories. That didn't come along really up until what you're saying, the Industrial Revolution. And it also has to do with classism, because you had the Dred Scott and you had the Gilded Age that came during that time. And then you had, at least in America, then you had the Great Depression that hit and all these people lost their jobs. And then you had FDR who came in and was like, no, we need to change a lot of these things, because we are already seeing what that level of education did to the people in America, to where there was such a divide that when the Great Depression hit, the people on the bottom were so badly off and that was a big majority of our citizens, that, you know, everyone should be able to get up to where they're here with the other people so they can take care of themselves. And then slowly, so he implemented all these things so that people could have that. And you did see this kind of thing happen, like literacy went up, people's ability to think on their own came up. And so you have, like, you know, World War II hitting, and then like after that, then you have like the 60s and all that, and you have like this, you know, where the top 1% were paying a huge number in taxes, like some upwards of 90%, and then it went down to like 70%. But you still and that funded into all of these educations and after school program. And the reason why I think, you know, kids of the 80s and 90s really benefited from that, in terms of, and 70s too, really benefited from it, because we had all of this money in education and infrastructure. And then in the 80s, and it took a while for it to really become trickle down to become where it is in terms of today, or even like in the early 2000s, was because Reagan was like, well, education shouldn't be free, you should be paying for it. So then you had this kind of this economic turmoil that actually happened, especially after George Bush came into power, political power, because he implemented a lot of those things that were put that Reagan, I don't know, brought up kind of thing, because it always takes time. And that, I mean, Clinton had overturned some of those things, but he had brought back a lot of that, including No Child Left Behind, which has been hugely detrimental to our education system. That was very long-winded, and I apologize.
Yes. I want to hear what the Florida man thinks of education.
Yeah, Florida man.
So, I remember, speaking of PTSD and triggering things, the third time I was on Kyber Cave a year ago. Oh, Van wants to leave now. I'm about to call his ass out, and he wants to leave now. The third time I was on Kyber Cave.
Anywhere. I'm just sorry. Good.
We were talking about this very subject, and I brought up the thought that there should be a class before you exit high school, either junior or senior year, where it's beyond home ec. It's basically they prepare you for the real world. And he chewed into my ass for bringing that up. And I was like, okay, so here's what they teach you. You take a field trip to the store and you put things in a cart, and you are to round and budget out what's in your cart versus what's in your wallet. And you have to be able to leave the store with a little bit of change and still be able to feed yourself and your family. That's one thing they could do, balancing the checkbook. Or you have, or, you know, for today's times, you have like a mock online bank account where they're going to show you how to pay bills. I think there should be a, and again, this would be like for a more advanced situation. There should be a situation where you get to deal with an auto dealer, and they show you the ins and outs of what they're going to throw. You should learn what credit is, how it affects you. You should learn, you know, what a mortgage is. There should be literally, it is not just a semester. It needs to be a year-long freaking course, because in college they have a course for literally resume writing, and I took it. That was one of my final semesters. I had to take resume writing before going out into the real world. So my opinion on at least for high school education before you're let out into the real world, yeah, there should be classes on how to pay bills, how to buy food, how to buy a car, how to buy a house, how to rent a house, how to deal with apartment landlords, more advanced home ec stuff, cooking, cleaning, things like that, how to freaking take care of you and your own when you get the hell out of high school, because not everybody's going to college, not everybody's going into the military, not everybody's going to tech school, and not everybody's going straight to work. There should be something that should somewhat prepare you for this stuff.
I don't remember that shit. I'm not saying I didn't say it, but I don't remember that shit only because I'm all about life skills.
I'm gonna go back and find the episode.
Look that shit.
So James just
life skills.
You should read those comments.
Yeah.
It's called the plant-based diet, dear. That's what it's called.
It's called the Mrs. Spores fucked me out of my good food diet. That's what. What?
Whatever the food I made was amazing. Shush.
No, I'm talking about the stuff that I did not eat while I was there.
That's true.
And now I'm no longer eating. And it's funny. It's funny. He says my wrists and hands. Have you not noticed that all my neck weight is gone, James? Like I actually have a face now.
Well, we know James is a wrist man.
Apparently he's a wrist man. But it's called the come and live at my diet, because I don't play around with that shit.
Yeah, so I'm still even now that I'm home, still living her diet.
Well, to your point, Forrest, and to ours, do you think that a lot of trade schools going away is a problem because not everyone's set to work in the cubicle, not everyone's ready to work in the computer? That we need people to work on cars, we need people to do this stuff, and trade schools are dwindling; they're dying. Do you think they're necessary? Oh,
yeah. God, I don't know how much advice that I have. I think even with what was said, I still think that it all still leads towards education, or at least education in America still leads towards you working for other people. I feel like there's like a whole level that us in the middle class will never really see, an upper echelon on, how to control. But we're still, the whole basis of education is how to work for somebody else, and how to even as Aubrey was saying, and which is very true, up until the early 80s, when corporations started to become people themselves, which therefore you couldn't sue the head of a company when their company did some shady shit. That was when education and funding for education started going away. But even still, I would still argue that even though more money was available for education, even though we as a country backed education, shit, up until the 70s, you could go to college almost for free in California. And that was a major university. And so even though I wouldn't necessarily say that we valued more, even that was because the corporations needed smarter people to do more things to make them money, but they were still being controlled in this education system and still being limited to the types of opportunities that were going to be available to them. I still think a lot is still reserved for, jobs we'll never be able to get to.
The thing is that when it comes to the thing about when you have the problem is because in the 70s, before the 80s, in the middle of the 80s with the trickle down system, we had it where, there was a much higher tax bracket for corporations, because corporations were still seen as people
and individuals that made high amounts of money, just like you were saying.
That decision came even as in the industrial age. That was
some people in corporations that were being taxed 70, 80, almost 90% of their revenue. But in today's day and age, those corporations just move to another country where their tax rates are next to nothing. They incorporate themselves there. That's what Apple
That was
does.
in the, but that was with that was in the 80s. That was when a lot of that change happened. But before that, they actually were still here in America. They didn't move those across seas
They
yet.
didn't
They were
then, but
paying
that's
into
when we
the
had good
system.
shit. Yeah,
But
we don't have
they were
good shit
paying,
no
but
more.
they were paying into the infrastructure. It wasn't all about profit, profit, profit. It was like,
Right.
we are putting into the infrastructure because that is a way of you're keeping your profits low because of the taxing of it, and that they actually had tax laws in place that made it so companies could not go out of the country to get those tax deals.
Right.
That
And
was
then
something that
Republicans came
was
and
they
fucked that
weren't
shit
allowed.
up.
So now that is in the 80s that changed, and that's why they were using these shell companies, because they were given incentives to do so.
Exactly.
Well, let me ask you this,
Those
Ark.
and turn up.
You said life skills is an important thing, right? Don't you think learning to work for somebody is a life skill to learn?
I would,
Yeah.
I would say yes, but why not? Why not intrinsically teach people to, instead of working for somebody else, to have something for themselves?
Because not everyone can be a leader.
Yeah, I mean, what's going to happen if you have 20 people running a farm? Who the hell's going to drive the tractor? I mean, there are just certain scenarios where you have to have workers. You got to plant the seeds. You got to do the harvest. You got to drive the tractor. And there has to be somebody milking the cow. And you got to, I mean, I hate to take this old school, but somebody's got to do the hard work.
I don't.
Yeah, and if we are not, if we are,
disagree with you. But it's all like a pipeline, right? Like in the the turns of the centuries, or like the late 1800s, when you were an apprentice, you would go and you would work for a tanning shop or a perfume shop. You would be an apprentice there for 10 years, and then eventually you would open up your own shop, or you would become the when the person who died that had that perfume shop, you would take over that perfume shop. I look, there's a lot of things that have happened to me over the last month, especially in sales with Kyber Cave, and how we've done things a little bit differently, that have honestly really changed some of my perspectives. Last night, and this is by no means bragging, because Kyber Cave has a lot of debt to make up for, okay? So don't think that I'm balling out by anything. But last night, at an event we were invited to in San Francisco, in 3 hours, I made what will take me 2.5 months to make it my day job as a teacher, not as a fry cook, not as a janitor, and I'm not disparaging any jobs. I'm not saying that one job is better than another, but I am saying that for what we expect from teachers, for what parents yell at their kids, that they want their kids to know and be able to do, we're not investing enough into the people that are supposed to be making that happen.
So then let me ask this question in all fairness, okay? Are we talking about fair wages, or are we talking about job necessity? Because in every corporate or even private setting, somebody's gonna have to be the freaking grunt. I hate using that word.
No, but
I've had my ass kicked for using that word. But someone's gonna have to be the freaking grunt. And now, does that mean the grunt deserves an unfair wage? Hell no, not at all. People should be paid appropriately for what they can offer. Absolutely.
I don't disagree with you at all, but wait, hold on. I don't disagree with you at all, but I will say, as a business owner now, I have worked 15 years of retail. It's not like I just jumped in and just said, you know what, I'm fresh out of high school and I'm going to start my own business. I had to learn customer service skills by working at the mall, by working at insurance companies, by working at all these other different places. So it's not like I just one day, started my own business and then things were great. And even when I started my business, it wasn't like, woo, we're making money. I had to learn a lot of stuff. It was a retraining process of myself again, to where we're almost 5 years into Kyber Cave, and I'm just now getting to the point where, before Corona, we were on a steady track to be, self-sufficient, but Corona messed everything up for a lot of people. And we're just now starting to climb back out of the holes that, we kind of put ourselves in just to stay alive during the pandemic. So, I have often been that grunt. I have been the guy that has been mopping and cleaning, but all of that was education for what I'm doing now.
Sure.
And that's what
I
think we should be teaching people is not just, you should eventually start your own thing, whatever it is, follow your passion, but you have to learn about that craft. So you have to get yourself around other people that do. If you want to be a professional musician, get yourself around musicians who are doing it right now. Don't get yourself around musicians who are in their basement talking about making music. Get yourself around musicians who are out there touring and actually performing in front of people.
Ouch, I feel personally attacked by this, fan. Excuse you.
Yeah, if you want
to be personally attacked, so
if
please
you want to be if you want to be a computer programmer, you need to be around other people that talk about this thing that live.
Okay,
this.
can I make a counterpoint to this?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I actually talk for a second?
Oh yeah, Aubrey's been waiting to make a comment.
There were so many things that my original point got lost, but things are cyclical, and we were talking about like one thing in the 80s that is still perpetuating into today is the whole work smarter, not harder idea. And that was something that was put by corporations so that people would, that they would look down on these jobs. So people wouldn't want these certain jobs so that they can actually pay lower wages to those people at the bottom status. Before all of that, even into like the trickle down system, the reason why it was so successful among the corporates because they did not want to pay people livable wages because they wanted, the way of because you had all these people that were putting it back into the system. And so even the lower up, they had a much higher quality of life. And part of that is because of FDR's implementations of the 4 freedoms that we had, freedom from fear, freedom from finances, freedom from, I can't remember what they are at the moment. Why am I forgetting these 4 freedoms? Anyways, the point is, I have to go and look that up now because now my brain is like not, because I was trying to think of these things and then it just kept going on. But you had these implementations that were being put, and even to the lowest denominator, to the garbage man, to the people that were, agriculture, to all those things, those are also just equally important jobs, to fast food joints, to all that. Those are equally important jobs that were seen as, everyone should have a livable wage. That's actually where the minimum wage came from. And then it got changed into something like, this is a teenager's job. No, this is what the minimum level that people should be making so that they can live a comfortable, sustainable middle-class life. That's where the middle class arose from, was because of that. And that is what's disappearing, because then you have all of these cuts to the taxes. That's why you had all the higher level taxes of the 1%ers and all that, having to pay, the big corporations having to pay these large taxes, because that made it so that you paid into the infrastructure, so that minimum wage made it so that everybody was lifted up. And that was something that was cut, and including education in that had to do with that. So that was part of that whole, the casualties of the trickle down system, is that you now have no more money going into the infrastructure, that now we don't have those educational programs that are set in place to make people successful. And also these low paying jobs that are also put into place because education is so much lower now, that you have all of these, then they're seen as being lesser than, even though they really aren't, and that people should be being paid not the minimum wage that's made for teenagers, but actually a livable wage that people can have to sustain themselves, especially with the rising cost of inflation and such, because that's just the corporations making even more money.
Right. Nobody disputes that. A lot of these changes occurred in the 80s, and it's been going to, I really think that's why the 90s was the last great decade, because it was the last vestige of us having a lot of these freedoms, because there's just not enough money going around. And because of that, I mean, God, in the 70s, you could buy a brand new car for $5,000. You could buy a house for what, $25,000, $30,000.
Yeah, but
my family.
What was the income then, though?
Well, I mean, it was,
It was much more. It was still much more of a an equal level of that to what that was. Like we had, for instance, the minimum wage when I went to school was I think it was $6.25 was when I was going to school.
When I started,
it was in the late
95.
Yeah, but that was in the late 90s, and things were much like $20 could get you so much more at that time. Like gas prices were much cheaper, housing was so much cheaper. All of these things were also much cheaper, and people could live, working 40 hours a week. I mean, and again, this is also being offset. But so then you had up until 2015, I think, like when I got out of high school, the minimum wage was $7.25. That stayed the minimum wage up until 2010, 2015 was when they implemented the $15 minimum wage. That was something that was vastly different. Meanwhile, the inflation kept going up and up and up and up and up and up and up. So the cost of living skyrocketed while the minimum wage still stayed in the same places. And even then, you've had these corporations that are still trying to get around that, like servers and stuff. They make so much lower.
It was still a result of the taxations that was happening from the 80s. When I started, I got my first job in 1990. I was a junior in high school. So like 1990, 91, my starting salary was $4.25 minimum wage. And I remember gas was still under $1. There was one spot in town where I could get gas for like 98 cents a gallon. So that was in 1990 or 91 in California. I don't know where it would be in other, obviously it's probably be a lot cheaper.
It was $1 in 2002 here.
2002?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God, dude.
That's it wasn't that much. It was like 190 or it was still like 168, 170. I remember it in 2000, 2001.
I'm saying it was like $1.02.
Yeah.
Yeah. In 2000.
It wasn't that much more expensive than what you had. And then we saw that uptick when it went like from $1 and something to like $2.
I don't remember it being less than $3 in a long time.
Well, since when Bush came into power, when after the World Trade Centers fell, absolutely, that's when everything jumped. Because I remember my generation, we're like, what the heck? We just started driving. Now we have to pay all of this when everyone before didn't, because it jumped like $1.50, almost $2. It was insane.
Wow.
Yeah. Hope you guys got educated and learned something.
Force you the counterpoint.
Force.
I think Aubrey made my counterpoint, but I don't think I'm smart enough to follow everything she just said. My point was going to be this: like, sometimes you get a formula that just works, and in my own experience, I've encountered people who they don't want to set out on their own. They don't want to start their own thing. They don't want to shoot for the top, because sometimes you get a formula, you get a team in a company that does so damn well. The camaraderie is perfect. The supervisor is utilizing everybody's skill and talent set to their own specific maximum. They get along beautifully. They do their jobs beautifully. They're paid beautifully, and everybody succeeds. To bring that home, Van, if we were at over 1 million subscribers and over 7 million views, and you were utilizing Aubrey to her maximum talent, potential, as in she's writing music, she's doing song spots, she's doing stuff for Kyber Cave. Graveyard, he's got the gaming thing just absolutely on lockdown. I'm doing stuff that, kind of the same, doing some voice acting stuff. Anthony's providing a lot of comedy. Mezzo is on tech. I mean, like, we're all doing our own part, and our own skills and talents are being utilized to the max, and we don't want to break out and do our own thing. That's a good team environment.
You're correct.
If you were paying us, say,
that's the other part.
If we were, again, 7 million views, and Kyber Cave as a channel is making 700,000 a month, I mean, we're all getting hella paid. Dude, I'm not going to break out and go do my own thing. I'm going to stay doing what I love, with the people that I love, because it would bring me happiness and contentment and joy and a good living wage. Why in the blazing blue freak would I leave that? I'm not a leader, dude. I am
You
much
wouldn't,
more.
but the important part of that equation was that you said everybody was getting paid and everybody was working to their potential and talent, right? That's not what
Yes.
happens in America. In America, you bust your ass so that your boss can get more and more paid, right? But you're still not getting paid. So
But
if that
that's
were
why
the
I
case,
said sometimes that formula
That's why
doesn't
trickle
exist.
down
that
system doesn't
sometimes
work.
that sometimes is a very, very rare thing, and you tend to mostly find that in artistic endeavors such as movie making or video game making or music making, because those are places where we've allowed people to have that type of freedom. But the
hold on.
everyday person that's working at
But
the
who's
at the
making
mall
that
doesn't
money?
get that.
It's usually it's the accountants and the executives, not the actual creators that are actually making the money, though. In those big
Yeah, I didn't say that the creators are making money. I was saying that they had the creative opportunity to work together in a free space. Whereas, like, if you go work at a Safeway, you're told exactly what to do. A musician,
Right.
a lot of time musicians get together and they create something of their
Yes.
own. They don't necessarily make the money for it, but at least the job part. So what Aaron's talking about is having both working to your potential and getting paid for it, right? Let's look at a lot of other YouTube channels, or let's use some of our favorite new rock stars, right? New rock stars is a great example of what Aaron's talking about, because they are growing their staff, and I would assume that people are making more and more money because the company as a whole is growing. When you have that happening, then there's no reason to leave, just like Aaron is saying, and whoever's in charge of that business is running a successful business. But what I am arguing is that we should all have the opportunity to do that, or at least be in the position where we love our friggin' jobs.
And just like I was saying, this is why trickle down system does not work. This is why it is literally going to kill America, because it already is.
Yeah, well, it already has.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
we're seeing that fallout right now.
Well, I mean, if we or to your point is if we all did that endeavor, if we all go, hey, let's all open lightsaber shops, right? And what you're talking about, that business growth and stuff like that, you're talking about mom and pop shops again versus major corporations, and that's the only way you get to that point, is that everyone has their own business.
It's breaking the monopolies, right?
In
some ways, it's going back to an older system, but without like the bartering, right? Like,
we're gonna have
why not, Matt? Why not you have your own brewery? You know what I mean? And I have my own lightsaber shop, and because I'm making money at lightsabers, I can come afford to have a pub, to have a beer at your brewery and have a burger.
Okay,
you know
so
what I mean? And then while I'm there, Aubrey's on stage, and you've paid her well as a musician. Why can't we all make money doing the things that we are passionate about?
So then would I be out of line if I were to say, okay, well, you know what? I want to come work for Matt, helping him brew, and then on my off hours, I want to come to Kyber Cave and help sell stuff.
Right.
And that's my passion. I want to come and help and get good at what you guys are doing. And rather than take off and do my own thing, I want to stay with you guys because you're my friends, and I get joy in helping you. Thus, I benefit.
Right, and you could. That's what I'm saying. But we're not even really given that option, or we're not set up mentally from the beginning to think that that's an option. We're just taught that we go work for somebody else, right?
Yes.
But you know what? I can tell you, like at Kyber Cave, when we have like good weekends and stuff, my employees get bonuses, dude. Like if we work hard, I take my crew out to eat. When my mom passed away, I took my 3 employees that I had, I took them to Disneyland for holding down the shop for 2 months while I took care of my mom. You know what I mean? And yes, does it cost me more money? I'm not making the same, I'm obviously not, balling out and driving a Lamborghini, but that is my value. My value is that if I succeed, the people around me that help me succeed should also benefit. If I am growing, then the people that put me there should also be growing, because guess what? There's going to come a point when they're going to turn around and go, what the fuck am I doing all this work for if I'm not seeing any of the benefit of it? And even if the benefit is just your joy of having some place that you enjoy coming to, that's better than a boss that berates you and, talks down to you or sexually harasses you because they know you need the fucking job.
Yeah.
Truth.
I
And
mean,
that does happen.
But if this channel got big, say we had 50, 100 people.
My friend, when?
I'm just saying, if we had 50, 100 people working for us, you're not going to be able to have that personal touch with every individual person.
That's true.
I don't.
Here's
maybe,
what I would.
Maybe you can't, but you can divide things out, right? Like if I've got 6 kids, I don't get to spend as much time with my kids as if I had one child. I could spend more time with them, right? But I've seen episodes of Undercover Boss where, like, even an employee who was further down in the ranks, when like an employee broke his leg, the boss came out and and brought him flowers for his family, and at least gave his condolences, at least acknowledged the people in his his employment.
But you are taking that boss completely out of the environment, completely out of context, and in front of the public.
Yep, absolutely.
That's not the boss. If they weren't doing the show, they would not have done that.
Well, no, that's something they had done before the show had occurred. That was, when they talk about,
But I mean, it's unfortunately though, it's a rare thing, and unfortunately, when you get to such a large population of a corporation, you need, unfortunately, the assholes to make sure people work.
No, I don't disagree, but Ben and Jerry's is a perfect example. Ben and Jerry's is a corporation that has their policy is that the top earning person cannot make more than 10 times the amount of the lowest paid employee. So the president of the company cannot make more than 10 times the amount of the janitor. So if the president wants to make more money, he got to make sure everybody in his crew make more money. I'm down for that.
I'm not saying it's right.
Kinko's had a pay share option where they had a set goal for the month. Let's just say it was $3,000. If the employees earned $3,500, that $500 was split out to the employees of that store. It was their bonus for working hard, which made them work harder. I don't know. I think there are things that can be, especially with the amounts of crazy money that these companies are making. You look at like Google. Google takes care of their employees, dude. Google, you bring your laundry in and you set your bag down and it comes back to you folded at the end of the night. They have free lunches and 5-star chefs that come in and feed their employees. They have free preschool on premises for their young mothers.
And what's the turnover rate at Google? Pretty damn high.
Well, there's a lot. They do expect a lot from me there.
Here's also something I do want to point out as well with the musician thing. You can be a musician, but doesn't mean that you have the skills to perpetuate new music too, because you have a lot of people who can play instruments and do all those things, but they're not creating anything new as well. And that's where education comes in, and we've seen, so one of the studies that they have is that music, it actually helps people with language much better. And in all terms, like math and language and the sciences, actually music is something that promotes that level of learning. Now, what do? They kill all the art programs.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that actually causes us to, in general, like that's why in a lot of ways we fail in those things. But do we need music to work at a company? No. But that is something that they have noticed with that is part of that, you're saying like education of killing free thought. And also,
music,
there's just so much
in education, art education in general. We've seen a huge decline in like music programs at schools, like live bands and live instruments being taken out of schools. At the same time, we're seeing a lot of decreases in painting programs and acting programs in high schools as well. And so the arts in general have always been known to stimulate math and sciences because of spatial relationships that they have to each other.
Yes.
Music.
They're only second to philosophy. It's usually philosophy, then it's art, then it's music. I personally think that music should be first, but that's how it's been. Or music is like should be second, and this is what they're showing that actually tends to what society tends to follow. So then you've got philosophy, then you have art, meaning like visual art, then you have music. No, I'd say they're basically the same. But then you've got the general, and then you got theology. So that is something that they've shown that, what follows one is that, so when those things fail, philosophy and the arts, society actually degrades. It does not move forward, doesn't progress any forward. That is something that has been proven over time in studies and showing through history. We didn't actually get out of the Dark Ages until art and music got out of the Dark Ages.
No,
and those were something that perpetuated like Age of Enlightenment and such.
Well, unfortunately, the America is like number 35.
We are dead last. We are dead last in the world.
And and if you go, I know someone that came from Ireland, and their school system in high school, they learn their career and they pick their career in high school versus college. Now, I've been to college. I got my undergraduate. I got my master's. All right, my undergraduate, I took 6 whole classes that were in my field of 3.5 years. So 1 semester was in my field. The rest had nothing to do with anything I was doing. I paid all that money. My master's was more, narrowed down to the field I'm in. But now it's doctorate is the very last vestige of it. And, that is our problem, is that we are trying to overcompensate for our falling behind of everything else, that we have to cram everything into everyone's head. And when we get rid of the arts program, for me, the arts program is a creative outlet. I can't be creative in what I do in my day-to-day job. If I get creative, it probably is not going to work, because if I was creative in it, I'd be a billionaire creating my own stuff, right?
Right.
So I use the arts, and especially brewing and video games, as my creative outlet to help compensate for not necessarily liking my job, but it's still the outlet to be creative, to be my own person in creating something. And I think that's a good thing that we need to have, but we get rid of, because not everyone's going to be using math in day to day. Not everyone's going to be an engineer. It's just we're getting rid of the choices of showing people all the different potential paths they can go down in life.
Yeah. And that's
whereas in your field of work versus my field of work, mine was hours and hours and hours of classes to do what I do, which is to write. Like the majority of classes I took for my graduate degree, which is my bachelor's degree, was for instance, I took 6 years of theory of music theory alone, just to give you guys an idea of how much work they had you do in the program that I was in to graduate from music. 6 years of theory. And then they actually require you to take at least 2 years of piano. They require you to take art history and all of these history in general, but they actually require you to take all of these things to get to where you only took 6 classes in your field for your graduate.
Yeah.
I mean, one semester I took 11 classes, and a lot of those weren't even I had one that wasn't even worth any units. It was just required. And then most of them were 1-unit classes. So as musicians, you get overworked. I didn't have a social life. Most of us musicians that were in the college program that I was in didn't have a social life. We all socialized with each other because we were all in practice rooms practicing. We didn't party. So it's such an interesting, versus a lot of people who don't take the arts programs, they can go and shut off their brain when they get home, because they could do their homework and then they shut off the brain. For people who are doing the arts, that never happens. So it's really interesting.
I would say, aside some specific examples, and probably hundreds of specific examples across the United States, the biggest problem that we have is it's got to be. I see nothing other than money being the problem. The money is the root of a lot of issues in this country.
Right.
But I would say, if education was really that important to us, why would we then not study best practices of other countries? If it's not just about who's getting paid and how somebody gets paid, why wouldn't we just do what is shown to be successful in other
Classism.
places? If we want our children as smart as the children in Japan or in Sweden or in some of these other places that show to have higher successes, which then leads to a higher GDP overall for the country, right? If you have a smarter population, you should be able to generate as a country more, gross production. So if education wasn't just about these departments being opened up, or in college, I think another part of the problem is that they still expect that if you're in college, you're still searching for what you want to do. That's why you have to take these arts classes and all these other classes that we feel like have nothing to do with us, right? Um, our view is by that time we're wanting to do what we want to do, which is why I think, as to your point earlier, trade schools are a really good choice for a lot of people, because some people just know that they want to work on auto engines, or they want to be airplane mechanics, or they want to be, I went to trade school as a graphic designer. So those are really good options, but we don't do what is best for our children. School lunches is another example. If you've seen like lunches from children around the world compared to what we give our children in a lot of schools in our country, even
That's
though they
because you have
are
people who are making,
nutritional.
The highest levels. They want to keep the money. So what do is that you basically dumb down education,
Right.
so that people will stay stuck in their living situations, so they can't move up on the
In
ladder.
California,
That's
we don't even have a
really
Department of
big.
Education. We have the Department of Instruction.
Right. That's, you can see that in case point with the old Trump administration, is that he's got people who are like in there, that are these CEOs that don't know dick about it, but they know how to keep money from going out into the system. So it's like, and hopefully that's changing now. But
Trump
like, you
Trump
had
wasn't
Betsy
really good at
DeVos.
that. He bombed 7 businesses. So
Oh, I know. But again, he has money, so therefore he knows things. And it's the whole idea of like, people who have money know things, and so they're able to get into those positions of power, partially because of cronyism and partially because of money. And then they keep other people. They make it harder for other people to not game the system, but it's like, you're not looking out for your lowest totem pole of the citizens. You are only looking out for you and your money, your living situation, because you can't have anybody else rise above you, which is why we are so behind in health and in education. Hooray, yay
so many
us.
places. All right, guys. We are coming close to the end. I think it's a good time to do all of our pluggables. I want to thank Mr. Graveyard, Miss Captain, and Mr. Forrest for being here tonight. This has definitely been interesting and rousing discussions that affect us all, young and old together. So why don't we just start where we are at with the captain, my captain.
Hi, I'm the asshole that says a lot of things. I'm the captain. So
that should be on a name flag. The asshole that says lots of things. Your favorite DJ.
Your favorite musician here, Captain Lady Moon, who is strong in the fours. So yeah, I am Aubrey McCoy. I'm a musician, a composer, and I do the only ship that frickin' matters, sir.
Friendship.
I was gonna say the Enterprise, but sure, that works too. Anyways, yeah. I have a lot of music on Spotify. I have newer projects that are coming up. I'm going to be writing a lot more projects for this channel, and but you can check me out on Spotify under Aubrey McCoy or under BYL. I've got some music there. I I've got music all over the place. But anyways, you can a lot of small stuff. But anyways, you can go check me out on Spotify under Aubrey McCoy. That should come up. I've got my personal album. I'm starting a second one, or I've been working on a second one. So that will come out sometime soon. So that's where you can find me. I'm also an actress. I will be in some future projects that are coming up. So yeah, check me out.
Woo! All righty. And just because I saw this guy running off camera real quick and then running back.
Oh yes, he's got that. That's my album.
Wow. And I see it's still in the wrapper.
Yeah, you haven't taken out his wrapper and
You're muted there, buddy.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna get it digitally. I'm gonna keep this thing like as a treasure forever. And look, ship.
The friend.
I'm the captain. Actually, that is a line of one of my songs. Is "I'm a captain." I made
The
this
album
straight up.
is absolutely, Dave, for you, fucking amazing. Let's just go ahead and put it out there.
Oh, Dave.
Thank you.
I am Mr. Fours. Yeah, all know that's my better half. So what does that make me? The worse half.
Shut up. Fuck it.
I'm going to encourage all of you to go to kybercave.com where you can get yourself a lightsaber. Probably not one as magnificent as this.
Oh, we do not.
Oh my gosh, you got that? You got the Master's lightsaber? I love it. I love it so much.
But you can get a saber at kybercave.com. You can catch them at cons, but I encourage you to go to the website, buy as many as you can, then go to saberfont.com and purchase a font from me, from my friends. Support them, Juan Sith and Harry Solo fonts, respectively. Juan Sith was just on Saber Rattle this past Sunday.
Yes.
Nice.
And you can also find me here on Kyber Cave Productions on Thursday nights for live gaming, Fridays for Kyber Cave
The
After
show,
Dark,
right?
and I will be rejoining the Husbeard over here and helping with the Retro Alcove, which is the ship he drives, which is great. You can also
Wow.
find me over on the sister channel with Distance Nerding. You'll find me there Thursdays on the build, and yeah, that's kind of what I do. And I just love this channel and all my people with it. So
And we love you too.
Love you.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Graveyard.
I am Graveyard, co-host of the Mostly Pod Out Night, Mostly Podcast. You can get that anywhere you get your podcast. Every Wednesday, new episodes drop. You can follow us on all social media at Pod Out at Night. So make sure to check us out. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram. Come talk horror with me on there, man. I love horror. Everyone knows that. On top of that, you can find me 4 days a week here at Kyber Cave Productions. Make sure to check out our newer show, Saturday Morning Nerd Out, which is episode 7 tomorrow. We have great things in store planned for that. On top of that, on Thursdays, you can find me at the build running the brackets over our sister channel, Distance Nerding.
Yes.
And if you want to talk nerdy to us, you want to talk horror, you want to talk gaming with us, join our Discord server. It's absolutely free. We want to hear from you guys.
There we go.
And I said it last night on our channel, our show. I'm saying it again. I'm going to be posting a video for a challenge for people to create Mario Maker 2 levels for me. I will be doing live events for Mario Maker 2, and I want to get the community growing there on Discord. So make sure to join our Discord server and submit your viewer levels to me that I will play. I will put more gray into this beard between Lord of the Rings and these games. I'm going to be full Gandalf gray at some point in time. And
We will be doing that soon.
Yes.
Yes.
Also join our Patreon just for a little $1 a month. You can help support our channel and helps us bring new and great things to you guys. And the higher
Like the
tiers
new
you
one.
have, the higher tiers you have, the more chances you have to win free swag. We just gave away 5 lightsabers just a couple weeks ago, folks. 8. Well, 5 for Patreon.
Right. And then 3 for just the people in the audience.
Yes, and so make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, because the more subscribers we have, the more chances you have to win a lightsaber from us. So it helps us out greatly and lets us know that you like our content.
Yes, thank you. Yes, all these people work very hard at the channel, and I love the work that they do. We are only 30 people away from the next giveaway. We picked up a bunch of people last night at the San Francisco
awesome.
Academy of Art. So 30 people away. If we can get 30 more subscribers, we are giving away another Saber. And it has been absolutely awesome to meet a lot of people. It's kind of funny. Last night was the first night where I had 2 people come up and tell me that they knew me from YouTube as opposed to knowing me from the store. Wow. So yeah, it was kind of, I was like, oh wow. It was like, so we are growing, guys, slowly but surely. Some random people in San Francisco know about us. Tomorrow morning, Kyber Cave is going to be at Waterfront Comics in Sassoon at Free Comic Book Day. We're going to be there from 11 to 4, and we're giving away free keychains to anybody that comes in costume. So all you got to do is just come pick up your free comic book, and if you're wearing a costume, we'll give you a lightsaber keychain. Also, on Sunday, we are going to be in Sacramento at Toy Fusion for the toy swap from 9 until 2. Then I'll be back in the shop at 4 to 7, and then at 7 we have an interview with Tim Donaldson from A New Hope. He was a Jawa that was at our last KyberCon 3, so he is going to be with us this weekend, and we keep rolling on and moving on. Wait,
so well, you're one of my favorite watchers.
Oh man, Say Wong. We were talking at 8 o'clock, and I was like, "Oh shit, I'm gonna get this started right now, so Say Wong can't say crap."
That's true. That's very true.
So, anyways, I would like to thank everybody who hangs out with us, even Say Wong, on Friday nights. It's always a ton of fun hanging out with the fam. Make sure you are waking up and getting up for the Nerd Out. That is our newest show and a fun show to watch. So make sure to check out all my Kyber Cave friends on all of their shows. So with that, I would like to say good night, y'all.
May the fours be with you.
Always. Peace.